Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We're going to be kind of walking through how off Amazon strategies can help funnel into your on Amazon strategies. Excited to have Corey with us today. So, Corey, you want to share a couple highlights from what you guys got out of Innovate?
Yeah, sure. So actually, and if some of you want to hop on my LinkedIn, I actually did like kind of a what we call the live tweet of some of the talks and went through kind of the highlights from each speaker. And Innovate was awesome. And there were a lot of very high level sellers, a lot of really influential people in the space that were there to build community and kind of deep dive into specific facets of how to kind of grow and scale and maintain that, and also some really great journeys from sellers that have been in the space and using Amazon and off Amazon. So I think some of those conversations were really great as well. And just the takeaways of trials and tribulations and how, my big saying is like success is not linear. And that was very, very transparently there for all of these journeys. They all had huge failures and then huge successes using Amazon. Some of the biggest insights were just, utilization of AMC and where AI is going and how to properly run promotions and set yourself up for success. So those would definitely be some of the big takeaways.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that definitely sounds great. I think we're talking about the more authenticity from speakers, people who are hands-on keyboard and accounts, bringing those insights. And I definitely think that's super valuable. I feel like I hear more and more about that event every year. So might have to try to make my way out there next year. I've never made it out for that one, but definitely sounds like a good one for sure.
I think the learning and content there was probably the best of all the events that I've been to this year in terms of Amazon specific information.
Awesome. Okay.
And I've been to a lot of events. If anyone follows me, I've been to a lot of events this year.
That's always one of my bigger critiques is like what as someone who's hands-on keyboard with things, what are the things that you can get out of it? So that's cool to hear though. I mean that alone I feel like makes the event worth going to if you can get three or four things that you can take out of it that you can go apply to your clients or your brand. And I think that alone is worth the cost, scaling that over time. It looks like we've got a decent crowd of people that have come in here. I'm sure more people will continue to join along the way, but we can go ahead and kind of kick off into things. So again, I think appreciate you all joining us today. Excited to have this discussion about the top things that you can be doing on Amazon sales to grow your brand on Amazon, as well as a couple announcements that we saw at Unboxed, how those are affecting how our building brand strategies and a couple of things around that as well. So before we get into that, I'm going to do a couple of intros. My name is Kenton. I'm a customer success manager here at Intentwise. For those of you who aren't familiar with Intentwise, we are a software company in the Amazon and e-commerce space that kind of hits a couple of different areas. We have an ad optimization tool, which really focuses on helping you with the day-to-day of your ads on Amazon or on Walmart, from AI systems to automated rule systems. We have an analytics tool, which helps pipe all of your data into our data warehouses, and then we help you visualize it across different platforms, whether that's your Seller Central data, your ads data, helping visualize that across tools like Looker Studio and Power BI. And we have an AMC tool, which helps take the SQL needed out of AMC to do both custom and instructional queries, as well as help visualize that, which I think we'll talk about AMC and some strategies that even Amazon is pushing to make that easier to use, I think, a little bit later as well. So excited to see how those things kind of work into what we're doing as well. And then we have Corey joining us today as well. Corey, you want to do a quick intro on yourself and what you guys are doing?
Sure. So I'm Corey Brown, founder and CEO of Buffer Brand. We're a full service agency out of Buffalo, New York. We have folks in working on overall brand strategies, optimizations, brand management, advertising, and all the creative work that goes around that, and then pushing that to multiple channels. Although we're going to talk Amazon today, we also work, partners with Amazon, Walmart, and Shopify. And then we also work into some other platforms now that omnichannel is everything. So we're full service e-commerce growth partners that can help brands grow.
I think we kind of have a couple of points we want to really run through. I know, Corey, you mentioned some top off Amazon strategies that could push on Amazon, and some things that we have from Unboxed around AMC. But just so everyone's aware, we want to keep this more of a open discussion. Me and Corey have some questions we're going to run through with each other. Well, Corey, I think to kind of kick us off, I know we were talking about before we jumped on those kind of five main things that, help us push off Amazon traffic into Amazon, which obviously we know is a big key in driving, ad rankings, driving organic rankings on Amazon. Amazon loves to see that offsite traffic. What are those top things that you guys are working with your brands right now to really help them from that ranking with that offsite traffic perspective?
Yeah, for sure. So we'll kind of hit five here to start with, and then we can deep dive off of that. And some of these, admittedly, there's a blending at this point of what off Amazon and on Amazon means and in what direction people are flowing. So some of these things are kind of on Amazon, but they're not really on Amazon's core platform. So there's a little context for you. So 1 through 5, kind of run through this. So the number one that I have is AMC and DSP, terms that everyone's going to be hearing: Amazon Marketing Cloud and Demand Side Platform. The next one being influencer marketing and social selling, everything that surrounds that. The third is kind of off Amazon media buying, maybe a little more traditional looking at this point. Meta, Google, there may be some other opportunities as well. And then the fourth and fifth are where we start to kind of blend. So Prime TV, which is not really on Amazon, but it's kind of on Amazon's property. I'm owned by Amazon, but not. Yeah. Yeah. But we're still driving people from somewhere that isn't shopping on Amazon to shopping on Amazon. And then the fifth one is actually buy with Prime on your own DTC site, which I think doesn't get enough love. So I wanted to make sure that that one goes on there as well, because there's another blending that can absolutely help kind of skyrocket that velocity and BSR that we're talking about. That's always the focus. A number of these, you can also get some attributions and brand referrals, which we'll get into. But yeah, that's the top 5 right now.
Of course, yeah, and I think I like what you touched on there with Buy with Prime. Honestly, I think that was thinking back to Accelerate as we talk about different events that have happened recently. I think that was one of the more under the radar announcements that I kind of took away. Is, I think people, we noticed that they're opening it up to shop more like TikTok. They're opening it up for DSP support. But what I really saw is that is like the push for more of these traditional D2C brands to use Buy with Prime as a way to either accelerate their Amazon sales, get in Amazon as an ecosystem, use more Amazon ad products. So you can definitely tell that it's a focus from Amazon side of things to really push with that Buy with Prime thing. And I know that, I would expect that more and more things will be continued to be released for that side now that we're kind of seeing them start to go down that trend.
I keep confer as one of the people there's about 80 people in the room on the first day before pre-Accelerate, working on the implementation of that, the agency side of that, the support. They are roadmapping a ton of new options. They did a bunch of releases, and I think people were sleeping on it. I don't think it was one of the big, grandiose, it affects everyone types of conversations, but people should be really taking notice of that one in particular. That's why I want to kind of tack that on, because that is, again, that blending, and also that is Amazon's way of kind of getting their way into your own websites and things of that nature. So how do we get into that? How do we make sure that behooves us to do, and that, we're doing what we want strategy wise and not doing just what Amazon wants strategy wise. Right. So
interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think there's obviously lots of benefits from it right now, bringing in Amazon reviews. I've seen studies around increases from conversion rate, obviously from not only those reviews, but people just seeing that Prime badging. I think if you're even as like a smaller D2C seller, you might have issues with people trusting purchasing things on your website, and people see that Prime logo and automatically there's just that sense of trust and reliability built into that, I think. And so, the increasing conversion rate, you don't have to deal with fulfillment. You don't have to deal with working with a 3PL, any of that. And I think now we're adding support for Shopify, support for TikTok, more ways to push traffic to your site. I mean, being able to use Amazon first-party data to drive to your D2C is kind of unprecedented. Having that availability of data from that big of a seller to drive. If that's the tip of the iceberg, I think there's going to be a lot of cool opportunities there, definitely.
Absolutely. And the linking to DSP is another thing that we're just kind of on the threshold of here as well. And that's going to become absolutely massive.
Totally. I mean, I think, again, to be able to say, someone who's shopping actively for my product category on Amazon, I can actually bring them off of Amazon to my D2C site, things along those lines. I mean, that's going to be, you think we'll talk about those traditional methods of advertising, whether that's Google or Meta or those type of things. But even those platforms don't necessarily have that granular level of data. If someone is actively shopping in my product category, now I want to advertise to them. And so I think it's going to, as more people have frustrations with those other platforms, that's going to be a big opportunity for people to take advantage of as well. Kind of touching there and flipping that over to more of the traditional advertising side of things, whether that's, Meta, Google, push to other platforms, whether that's other DSPs like Trade Desk or even off Amazon or offline media. How are you guys seeing that? I know you mentioned you guys are working with brands not only on their Amazon sites, but their D2C sites, which I'm sure includes a lot of that stuff as well. But how are you guys seeing that push into what you guys are doing on Amazon? It's kind of in a cumbersome way at this point. I think there's so much to do. And one of the terms that I kept hearing at the last event was shiny new objects, like focusing on all the shiny new objects. And
we've always had this kind of traditional ad platform, search engine platform within Amazon that we kind of know the rules of, and they add layers of nuances and within the ad side, within the search side. And now all of a sudden we have this additional layering, right, of all those five and probably even more things than those are just the top ones. And it's like, where do we go? What do we do? Where do we put our budget? What's actually the most valuable for our brand? Who should be doing this? I think that's one of the big questions as well.
Yeah.
It's just like, who is this for? And what aspects are for me if I'm a seller? How do I qualify that and kind of figure out what my next steps are? So that's been probably the biggest gatekeeping that we've seen. Is just most people aren't doing much because they don't actually know where to go and if they should even be doing that. So maybe we should start kind of there.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, if you're a smaller seller doing all five of these tactics plus many more that are out there, plus advertising on Amazon, like you probably just, one, don't have the budget for that, and two, don't have the time or resources to put into that to do it efficiently. So I think it's definitely like you got to find the use cases that work for you. And maybe it's one brand, one or two of these works, another brand, a different set of these works. And so definitely, I think it comes down to evaluating what is right for your brand. So if you guys have steps that you guys are working to do to like evaluate that for your brands, I think that'd be great to kind of walk through it and see what you guys are doing from that perspective.
Yeah. So I think, just quick hitter items of kind of what we're looking at is how many channels people are on and are actively managing, how automated that process is, what type of team size and bandwidth do you have? And if you have a smaller team, do you have kind of an agency partner, us or otherwise, that's helping to alleviate bandwidth issues, actually implement these different strategies? And then also just the scalability of the products themselves. There's a lot of questions. I mean, that's a full, probably do a full hour just on qualifying who should be doing what. But essentially, I mean, there's something for everyone. I think that's the takeaway is everyone should be doing something off of Amazon to drive into Amazon. It's more looking to see where your audience is and what you can actually realistically take on and do well. And just like as we're expanding channels, expanding places, we always are looking at what can we take that's next steps, that's manageable, that we can strategize and we can roll out over time. And the way I look at, kind of this top five is qualifying what the number one is for yourself first and foremost for your brand, and then looking and road mapping and layering on top of that throughout maybe even the course of a year to get to the point where we're using most of these strategies that
I like that. I think it's not hitting on everything at once. I think that kind of goes into everything that we talk about on the Amazon side of things, from an A/B testing perspective. Right? I hear people talking about like we're going to A/B test our different ads, different ad creatives, different copy on our product pages, different, back-end keywords. I think always here as a caveat, or I try to mention as a caveat, is like, if you're gonna, those are all great to do. We should definitely test all of those. And I think that applies here as well. But starting in one place and doing one at a time, I think is vastly important. I don't think it's hard to be successful without that for, I think, two main reasons. One of which is it's hard to focus on two new things at once, right? It's hard to say, I want to launch an influencer strategy and I want to launch DSP at the same time, and having the resources dedicated to effectively doing both of those. But then the bigger reason is from a measurement perspective. I think, if I'm trying to launch two new strategies, especially these type of strategies that are off Amazon, leading on to Amazon, measurement can be hard in those situations just because we don't have direct links within the data. And so if I'm launching two new things and I see a lift in my data, I don't really know where that came from. We can use things like attribution links from social media, or, we're going to get some level, we could use AMC to measure our DSP data. There's some things we could do, but to truly see like, what was the lift on my sales from doing this? We kind of have to focus that test into one thing. And it's the same thing that we're seeing, with A/B tests with it and those content pieces like I was talking about. We want to focus on one of those because if your CTR increased, for an example, but you changed both your back-end keywords, which increased your rank, and you changed your images, and you did all these different things. It's hard to pinpoint which change you made was, led to that increase you saw. And now you're kind of still stuck in that limbo of what do I need to continue to test?
Precisely. So the number one, I'll kind of give you a one-off sentence here for those looking to start. There's, if you're at the point where you have a brand and you're thinking, I should be doing one of these things, I should be maybe testing a few of them out, think about this. The biggest shift we've seen right now is the discovery of product and where that happens.
Yeah.
Right. So it's now discovery of product is now happening off of Amazon, on social media, in different places than it traditionally did. Working backwards to that, if I'm a brand, I'm going to essentially work through my ICP and my ideal customer profile here. We're going to go through that, figure out using either AMC or some other ways to figure out some audiences of what our real audience is, and then figure out where are they currently discovering products. And that's where I laser focus my next step.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great way to go about it. I think we continue to see that shift of people going to different places to do their product research. I mean, if you look back in time, we went from people finding things at retail to people finding things on Google, and now people from Google have transitioned to Amazon. So if you're a D2C brand, you need to make sure you have an Amazon presence, even for that visibility back to D2C. Now it's kind of transitioning again to things like social commerce, like you mentioned earlier, influencers, off Amazon, other off Amazon tactics that are one going to drive sales on those other platforms, but two are helping drive that visibility back to what you're doing on Amazon, even if that's still your main priority, which is the same thing again that it was for those D2C brands or retail brands as those past shifts have happened as well. So it's definitely just kind of staying adaptive there. One question that we kind of got from someone in the audience that I think is important to touch on as we're thinking about off Amazon tactics. I think one thing you mentioned was it's important to choose one of these. Start with one, but everyone should be trying one. And I think that comes back to the importance of driving that off Amazon traffic for Amazon's algorithm. How are you guys seeing effects on rank, effects on your product exposure, effects on organic impressions? How are you seeing those changed based off of driving that off Amazon traffic?
So I think off Amazon traffic has been there for a while. It's been something that Amazon's wanted for a while. And if you think about it, they've also added the brand referral bonus, not anything super new, but it's something that to incentivize exactly that. So one of the biggest things that we're seeing in the space is actually kind of number two on my list, which is the influencer side of things. So I think that that's one of the most approachable, because there are some pretty awesome software programs to help you find influencers that fit that ICP that you have, and you can search them out. And then there's some caveats and nuances to that. But that would be the number one thing that we've seen is utilizing influencer marketing because it's a lot more measurable. If you're on a platform, so we have a couple partners that we use on those platforms, you can actually see your real-time conversion rate, which helps for you to figure out the costs, the budgets, all of those things, of course, but also you can measure that kind of, as you were saying, on a 1-to-1 ratio going, okay, so I got 100 sales from this influencer, and now I see my BSR has done this during that 30-day period, and I've made no other significant changes. Now I either want to double down on that influencer or stack something additional on top of that. So that's been one of the number one ways that we're going about it, because I think that that's the most approachable for someone who's looking for kind of a first step. AMC and DSP, I think, is actually more powerful long-term, but it's much more robust and a little more difficult to get into. There's a little more cost. You probably need to be working with someone, agency or otherwise, to help you actually implement that. So it could be a little more cost prohibitive, a little more time intensive. And thus, I think the influencers may be a really good starting point to go with.
Yeah, I like that. I think I've actually been thrown into an influencer position before, not as an influencer, but as like working with brands, been thrown in a position where I was like, hey, we want to do influencer marketing. I'd never done influencer marketing before, but working with one of those platforms, like you mentioned, that kind of built out these systems for it, it makes it super easy for someone who's never done that before. So I agree. I like that as a starting place. Working with these platforms who already have relationships with influencers, so I don't have to go do a bunch of outreach to influencers, have worked with these influencers before, so they can tell you, they give you some past metrics, show you some past videos that they've done. Their metrics look like, how are their views looking? What are their engagement rates look like? And then it comes back to the measurement for my engagement with them, like you're mentioning, right? They've built out measurement platforms to allow me to see, how did this affect my brand, then make further decisions on if I want to work with that influencer again, if I want to continue influencer marketing with other influencers, if I want to shift to other off Amazon tactics. So I think that's great. I think obviously that brand referral bonus is a big piece in that. I think that's been a big thing to see. We actually got a question from someone in the chat about what is that brand referral bonus. Do you mind touching on that one real quick as well?
Yeah, so it's a pretty standard bonus for Amazon, very, very on brand. So brand referral bonus is a 10% referral bonus for driving traffic from off Amazon to Amazon, pretty much in any fashion. We can use an attribution link to get that done. So when we talk about influencers and we kind of say, oh, well, you can use the brand referral bonus. Well, one of the ways that we can do that is, you have to pay an influencer commission. They do want to make money, right? So they're helping you, you're helping them. But let's say your commission on that is 10% that you pay to the influencer, and then you pay 10% less, so you get that kickback bonus from Amazon. Essentially, Amazon's giving you the money to pay that commission. So it can soften the blow of, different advertising types and commissions for influencers, things of that nature. So that's a huge thing we want to get set up.
I totally agree. That can help fund it. It helps from an attribution perspective. Amazon now seeing that traffic's coming from an offsite source. It gets a link to be clicked from the influencer's content. So lots of benefits for it. And I mean, who's not going to take a free 10% back on their sales that they're Amazon? Amazon's not really offering that in any other place. So we'll take what we can get there.
Another point on that would be, we've also seen, and it's changed over time, but we've seen when it comes to business sales rank, your BSR, and that velocity, the velocity that we always talk about, and kind of getting your product into a good ranking point, that they're actually giving, and the numbers change. I've seen it as high as kind of 4x, definitely at least 2x in terms of how much it impacts your BSR for sending people from off of Amazon onto it versus just capturing someone in the search. We're seeing a much higher sales velocity boost from setting off of Amazon, not just with the brand referral bonus, but just overall, anything that's getting pushed in is actually helping people's BSR more. So that's why these strategies are becoming even more important, because you could be doing an amazing job on Amazon and have all of your traditional, everything set up and it's running great, but someone could come and be viral on a social media platform and rise up the ranks really quickly because of that, and they can almost displace you. So we've seen that happen in a couple of categories, and I think that's where we need to start talking. Everyone should be doing this, but what should we do? That's why I feel that way, because you really have to be combating, because someone could now outflank you in a way that you almost can't even see it. If it's a TikTok influencer, let's say, and you're not on TikTok, you might not even know. You're like, who the heck are these guys? They're number 2 now. And it could just be that they're really good on TikTok and they're just basically filtering everyone through. So there's just some other things to consider while you're doing this.
Yeah, I've actually seen it from the other side of things. I was working with a brand who was working with some influencers on TikTok, and they had a video go like crazy viral. And so, obviously, I'm sure they saw an effect of that on their D2C, but they saw a really large effect on their Amazon. They a huge influx in branded searches, a huge influx in purchases. Their BSR shot up, which helped them down the road. And of course, the question after that was, how do we do that again? It was really interesting to see the effect of, they're just working with these standard influencers. They weren't working with anyone huge. They were, working with smaller budgets. But the beauty of some of these platforms is it just takes one video to really catch on. If your product, if you have an interesting product, if you work with influencers who can tell a story around your product, connect with an audience around your product, it doesn't have to be, some $20,000 influencer for you to see a positive return, a strong influx. It's not something that's guaranteed, but I don't think anything we're doing here is going to 100% lead to a guaranteed sale. So it's definitely something that I think, I agree, it's valuable to kind of work into that rotation of what you're doing.
And if you've ever seen on the influencer side, when it comes to or content in general, everyone wants every post to give them incremental growth, right?
Yeah.
It's like every post you post, you want, thousands of views, you want all the things to happen. But the reality is, if you're going to post, 100 things, you really just need a little boost from each of that.
Yeah.
And 1 or 2 of them to do really well. And that can be everything that you needed and more. And then you're talking about having inventory issues and things of that nature, which is a whole other podcast.
You never know. That's the beauty of doing this is, like you're saying, if you did 100 of them, 98 of them are probably going to get a couple thousand views. Maybe you get a couple sales off of them. But 1, those sales probably cover your costs. And 2, the influx of traffic or brand awareness you'd still get from that probably lead to some downstream sales later. Those other 2, right? That's probably where 80% of your actual traffic is coming from here. But if you just did 5 videos, you're probably not going to get one of those 2 really huge ones that you might get if you did 100. That's kind of becomes a volume game at that point. One question we got from the audience was around that brand referral bonus. Have you used brand referral bonuses and attribution links for any Vendor Central clients in the past?
So I don't know if we've actually implemented specifically for Vendor Central. Now, typically, I would say 95% of our portfolio that we work with at our agency are 3P, so they're in Seller Center. We do have some vendor clients that we work with. But generally, when we're working with vendor clients over the last 5 years, it's been transitioning them to being Seller Central. I don't think I have a solid answer on that one.
pretty sure it's actually only available for Seller Central because Amazon's setting the price and all of that for your Vendor Central side of things. But that may be something that we can get back to people on. But talking about BSR again, we got some questions around tracking that BSR. Like what is the importance of, obviously we're going to track, what does our traffic change? How does our sales change while we're doing these different campaigns? But you touched on BSR quite a few times. How are you guys making an emphasis to track how your BSR changes before you work with an influencer or any of these other off Amazon tactics, during the time period, and then after, how that affects your long-term BSR? Are you guys tracking that? And if so, like, how are you guys going about that?
I would say BSR, when it comes down to it, is nuanced in a few ways, because there's a sales rank. It's relative to the category that you're in. You can have what you would think would be a specific number in one category and be absolutely killing it, and then in another category, that same number means you're like not relevant at all. Like, where do we see? It's not really about the final amount of sales. Obviously, we can track that separately. So like the example that I would give would be something like this. Previously this year, we had a client who lost the buy box because somebody decided to sell their product at a lower price off of Amazon. Amazon caught it on a scrape, took their buy box away for a couple of days, gave their buy box back to them, and they dropped in those couple of days 10,000 spots in their BSR. We've been working to get them back there, because we know that relatively their sales volume has been very weak since then.
Right.
So their entire focus has been just getting back to that relative range, but there isn't a specific number that we have to get to in it to be like, that's the successful number. It's really just looking at the trend. And I always think that that's helpful, because you'll see, if you're a smaller seller, you'll see it at a very granular level, because it'll literally be like one sale and will spike your BSR. But when you get to be a little more sizable, you'll see the trends, and you can see, as I change prices, as I do promotions, as I do these different things. So we like to make sure that we're doing things on different days or weeks, so that I can at least look at the trend to see like, wow, what did that do to our BSR? And then off of that, you take those trends and go, okay, so now what did that mean in actual sales beyond that? Because a spike in BSR means that there was a spike in sales, but how much? And looking at that incremental and kind of figuring out what that actually means to your bottom line. Because the other side is like, you could spike your BSR with a promo and do 2x the amount of sales on that given day, Prime Deals day. Like they'll spike their BSR, they'll get tons of deals, they'll get tons of sales, and they make less money on that day. Yeah, so organizing and balancing those trends over time, and kind of keeping your eye on it's really the pulse of what you're doing as a seller.
Awesome. Yeah, I agree. I think being able to measure it, being able to make sure we're not, like you're saying, just paying to spike our PSR, but being able to attribute it back to our sales, our top line profit. I totally agree. I think it's going to be something that you're going to kind of gradually see over time as we start driving more of this traffic. And I think another way, one of the big things that I'm hearing recently is like a big way to drive either traffic or general brand awareness, getting more people out with our brand, is around Prime Video, like you talked about earlier, or and just connected TV in general. Obviously, that was a big topic. I think that was touched on and Unboxed. We had a whole keynote around entertainment, new programs coming to Prime Video, the things that are on that works on that side of things. And you can tell it's definitely a focus, not only on the inventory side of things, but on the advertising side of things for Prime Video. They obviously, it's been about a year or so now that since they've introduced ads, they've come out and said things around increasing ad placements. They're getting into live sports now, which I think is going to open up a really big new market, which, considering that's one of the last markets that has really retained a live audience. Obviously, a lot of other things have moved down that streaming route. So how are you guys, I think, it's definitely still newer, probably a lot of larger brands still working with this, but how are you guys thinking about Prime Video? How are you guys preparing for how these changes that we see coming in Prime Video, so that you can stay on top of things with the brands you guys are working with?
Yeah. So I think let's go kind of twofold here. So one, let's just talk Prime Video for a minute here and kind of talk that, and then we'll kind of talk how it impacts people. So Prime Video, I was privy, to be at one of the last events and really deep dive into Prime Video and what they're trying to do, and all the entities that they're purchasing. The NBA, the WNBA is coming up, the NWSL is coming up. They've been adding more and more football and anything they can get their hands on, essentially, to get this platform up, right? Well, one of the things that I think is most interesting is kind of twofold. One, they have guaranteed that they're only going to do 2 to 3.5 minutes of advertising per hour on their platform, which is 2 minutes less than standard on every other platform, right? So that's pretty significant. And there's a reason they're doing it. One, I think it'll drive up prices of what those ads cost. But I think that the engagement on those, and this is what they've been testing, will be much, much better. Take that one step further when, as all this generative AI and everything, and we'll get into a little bit of that in a bit. As SEO kind of switches to GEO, they're going to know what you like, what you want. You'll be watching a show you like, and you'll get an ad for a thing that they already know that you want, and they're then putting it on you can hit OK, and it will purchase it.
I love the point that you touched on. It's going to be for the first time very targeted on like you, the consumer. I remember I got an ad a couple of months ago for like a DSP network, and I'm like, one, they're either A, really bad at marketing because they're putting. I was watching like the NBA. I'm like, they're putting a DSP network on an NBA commercial, or two, they're very targeted to target me with something like that. It definitely is something that sparked my interest on like the potential of all of these things, because it's definitely not something that we've seen before, that either in a streaming or a live TV environment, especially, that you can be seeing a different ad than your neighbor is. One, we're seeing the reduced inventories, people are going to be paying more attention, but two, me and the person down the street could be seeing completely separate ads based off of our interests, our shopping histories, our lifestyles. Which, one, I think from a consumer standpoint, we're going to see commercials either way. So I'd rather see relevant commercials to me. I think it's going to make us pay more attention. And two, from a brand standpoint, the availability of getting into these different placements is wildly more available. Thinking back to 10 years ago, if I wanted to advertise during an NFL game, I mean, I had to have a huge budget because I had to target the million people across the country that were going to be watching the game. Nowadays, you're still probably not doing this with $1,000 budget, but if I want to go into there and I want to showcase a 30-second ads to, 10, 20,000 people that are very targeted within my network, I could have a smaller budget for that campaign and then dedicate more budget to retargeting those direct customers after the ad. I can target just the segment of customers that's on my ad. So it's lots of more availability I think we have that's going to benefit both consumers and brands.
I'm a marketer, so I'm a little jaded when it comes to seeing commercials and things of that nature. My wife would attest to that. And I just look at it as, oh, you're watching a football game, and maybe instead of seeing ads for pharmaceuticals and insurance and trucks and beer, right, none of which has anything to do with me and I'm not interested in at all. If I saw something for the newest pair of Nike Pegasus running shoes, or nutrition, or dog things, or something for my kids to go outdoors, go camping, I'm probably going to engage with it. As much as I hate to admit that I would, no, I'm going to be far more likely to go, oh, and it's actually going to spur thoughts. Or what if it's, for example, I've had this amazing jacket that I looked at a couple of weeks ago, and they have been retargeting me everywhere, but it's like, if it follows me onto the TV, you're going to see ads either way. It's cool to think that they're going to place ads that at least will be relevant to the life that you live. And, it's potentially a little scary from that, knowing everything. But I think, we're so inundated with ads, it would almost be nice to just have fewer ads, but ones that are very pertinent to our lives.
And I think the thing that's very interesting to me is we're seeing reduced ads on Prime Video compared to other similar streaming platforms. From what I'm seeing, we're actually seeing lower costs on Prime Video from like an advertising perspective than Netflix, for an example, right? Which I think is interesting to see that we're seeing. Obviously, we're going to be paying more than an in-stream video or a click on a sponsored product ad. We're still spending more than that just because of the value that are coming out of these placements. But Amazon's definitely, you can tell they're being very aggressive with going after this new inventory, trying to bring advertisers into the system, still creating a positive experience for consumers. Similar to some of these other things we're talking about, we're still just at the start of this, and they're going to keep going after these different inventories, keep giving us different targeting options, give us ways to follow up with customers after they see the live ad. So I think there's lots of cool things still on the horizon for this.
Yeah, and I'll kind of add the second part of the question was kind of like, how are we implementing and what are we seeing? Yeah. And so from our perspective, there are some credits out there to utilize to test this out for a lot of brands that are out there. There's some hundreds of dollars that you can kind of put into testing this out, which I think is cool. It's really smart on Amazon's end of things. We've done that for a number of clients. I don't know that we've had any clients continue on past using the credit at this point, because there's been a lot of brand awareness, but maybe not enough conversion. And that could just be who we work with, right? Yeah. So as an example, when Amazon's touting how, the engagement's up and the placements are amazing and these brands are seeing this holistic view, and they're talking about Clorox. Of course, Clorox is going to do well. And the other one was, I don't even remember that, but it was Paris Hilton's brand for something that she's putting out. It's like, well, of course that's going to do well. She's a public figure. So picking and choosing, that's why I say, utilizing the top five. Video, you may not have beautiful video content. You might not have a really sexy made for TV product. You might not have a celebrity endorsement, or you might not be Clorox. So maybe this isn't the one for you right now, but it's something to at least think about, especially when you get as you approach an even higher level of granularity, you might be able to be, if you're a running company, you can target people like me, just runners. That might be really worthwhile to you to run ads on TV, even though it seems really grandiose. If you get granularity and just target marathoners, you're hitting your exact market. So it could absolutely work.
I mean, I think that's the beauty of it, right? We're not forced to target to everyone watching a program. We can target people who are very specifically interested in our product and our product categories. And yeah, it's still going to be something that's high in the funnel. We're going to need to have some tactics lower in the funnel to bring back these customers to get those final sales. But even from that first touch point, right, this is the easiest way to reach a mass audience of people that are probably interested in your product. Like we can use these audiences and other DSP placements, but to truly capture their attention, this is going to be the easiest way we have to do that. And two, again, it's that beauty of being able to be very targeted in, like you're saying, I want to just target someone who's interested in marathon runners to sell my running shoe. That's completely unprecedented from what we would have been able to do a decade ago or 5 years ago. And I think that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for different brands. I think the important thing to do off of that, though, is to, like you're mentioning, it's sometimes hard to see the conversions downstream of that. I think implementing tactics before you go into that prime video or high funnel, any awareness tactic, really, I think that can apply to any of these. Having tactics in place to, one, measure what you're doing, whether that's attribution links like we were talking about, whether that's looking at your BSR, or if that's going down a path like an Amazon Marketing Cloud if you're doing something with the DSP or Prime Video, where we can bring in those different metrics. And I think the second point on that is making sure that you have downstream places to re-engage with these customers. I think the important thing to note with most of these tactics is a lot of them, whether it's looking at very broad meta audience, or it's looking at a Prime Video placement, or it's looking at, a customer that's we got from an influencer, that they're very high funnel. They're just becoming aware of your brand. So having touch points, whether it's retargeting people who came to your page from those assets or saw your Prime Video ad with a display ad, right? Or creating other audiences to show them in-stream video ads, offering them some type of we do something with the reward deals that are now available on DSP. You can be creative about it, but having a plan for how you want to go about re-engaging those customers, I think is really important as you go into these type of strategies as well. What's something that's really helpful for managing these type of things, specifically on Prime Video, which I've done in the past as well, is using brand lift studies. So I agree, is definitely a great way to, maybe it's harder to attribute the conversions, but by using a brand lift study, for those of you who are unaware of it, basically Amazon has a panel of shoppers where they'll ask a control group and a group of people that saw your ad a series of questions that are along the lines of, which can you recall seeing an ad for one of these products, which it'll include your product and a couple competitors, which of these products do you associate with a certain feature, and you can pick what that feature is that you want to see if they associate with your product, which of these products would you most likely to purchase within the next 30 days. So you can kind of get an idea of, based off of the control group versus the group that saw your ad, is the group that saw your ad more likely to engage with your product based off those answers. So I think that's a great call out and something that I definitely recommend. Those are free if you're taking advantage of the DSP as well. So I guess on that point, I know one of the last ones you had mentioned that we haven't touched on yet was more down funnel DSP strategies, AMC strategies, which were obviously a big topic at Unboxed. We heard about AMC for sponsored products, not needing to use DSP anymore. We heard about audience bid boosting on the sponsored ad side of things, right? I can use AMC audiences within my sponsored display campaigns. They're making AMC more readily available with some insights in console. So lots of new things coming here. They even revamped the DSP console. What are the main couple of things that you guys are taking out of this and really honing in on from all the announcements we've gotten recently?
Really good multi-layered question there. I think there's a bunch to unpack, so I'll try to keep it as succinct as possible here. So when it comes down to it, we're seeing a pretty monumental shift in the Amazon ecosystem. And I think it's like AMC is the current leverage point of that shift. So, and I think it's going to come in conjunction with AI. So I mentioned earlier the term SEO versus GEO. So moving from a search engine optimization into more of a generative engine optimization. Yeah. So, for those who you maybe aren't jumping into that world quite yet, we of course have Amazon's Rufus, which is their AI assistant, so to speak, that's going to help curate products for you, help you make decisions, help you dissect and summarize information, right? So we're moving into a world where Amazon, instead of holding back all of the information of their customers, and I say their customers very pointedly because they've made it clear over the last bunch of years it's their customer, not your customer. They're now starting to turn the corner and say, wait a minute, if we give away the information, sellers will spend more. Yep. And convert more with customers because they can actually find the customers that are looking for them and vice versa. And so now we're seeing this monumental tandem shift of granularity of information being just readily available, right? And so that was starting to be available. We had it in the DSP console, but not everybody has that available to them. Now it's shifting into being available to essentially every seller. So here they are giving us the information and essentially then incentivizing us to utilize that information to start to micro personalize our content, our products, our brand to real audiences in real time. And where this could move in the future is more of a just absolute like hyper personalization, kind of at scale. And that's a huge shift. That's a huge, huge shift where you could see how that will go. And even just like jumping down into kind of your traditional ads platform, being able to have AMC audiences to use in tandem with your sponsored products to utilize for targeting audiences with like a sponsored display, or even then jumping into bid boosting and kind of using that for sponsored brands and sponsored products. Those are all huge ways that we can cause some incremental growth and really re-strategize how the entire system works to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just opens so many different doors, whether it's, I want to go retarget people after a big event who added my cart to their product or added my cart to their list. I think that's something that I've gotten a request from lots of people in the past before we had AMC readily available is, oh, it's post holiday. We want to retarget people who added our product to their list because maybe it was a wish list and they didn't receive the product. And so we want to retarget them. Maybe they'll buy it now. And unfortunately in the past that hasn't been readily available, but now I can easily create an audience around that. And I have multiple ways to apply that, whether it's on the DSP, whether it's in sponsored display, whether I want to use bid boosting for that. Lots of different paths I can go down to target those customers. Or if I know that, hey, I convert customers at a higher rate after they've seen a sponsored brand and a sponsored product ad, I can create an audience of everyone who's seen a sponsored product ad from me and use that to bid boost my sponsored brand campaigns. And so I can hit those customers more effectively. So there's lots of different routes we can go from, whether that's more efficient touch points, more efficient ad paths, just going after higher value audiences. And so I totally agree. And I can see why Amazon's going down that path, but it's definitely, like you're mentioning, a shift from where they've been in the past of kind of safeguarding that data that they.
Yeah. And imagine this example, like, let's say you are a young couple, you're getting married, you have your registry and you want all these products. And maybe you represent a high-end cookware brand where, that if people that are younger, they're moving into a house together, they're starting to curate what they're going to have in their home. And, maybe they really want this high-end cookware and nobody buys it on their registry, but it's still there. Yep. It's added. It never gets purchased. But then post-wedding, they have maybe, if they're, fortunate enough to have family support that would give them some financial means to help out. And, a lot of people have that. They can then retarget them. They'd be like, hey, I know you wanted this cookware and you're post-wedding now, so maybe you have a little more financial ability to go ahead and get that for yourself. Here it is. And here it is again. Here it is on the social media. Here it is when you sit down on your couch in your new home with your new husband. Here it is on your TV and you can add it to cart right here. Let's go. And like that, I could go on and on and on of all the touch points of that. That thought process has to be, I think it's good for everyone, like consumer and seller. I think that's what Amazon's trying to create is a very two-way street.
100%, right? I mean, as a consumer, we're going to see ads everywhere, whether we like it or not. So I'd rather, I think the same thing as we were talking about with the TV side of things earlier. I'd rather see ads that are relevant to me. And as an advertiser, one, you're going to see much higher interaction rates. You're going to, assuming you're going after the right audience, but you're going to see much higher conversion rates. And it gives you more touch points, like you're mentioning, that I can interact with the same customer. I can hit them on their TV, on an Alexa show they might have. I can hit them on an audio ad. I can hit that all these different places, right? And make sure I'm hitting those same segments of customers, which again, higher engagement. It's probably still awareness tactics, but we're lower in that funnel already because we know are interested in our type of product. They've expressed an interest. I totally agree. I think it's opening up a lot of doors for these different brands. So one question we actually got earlier in the chat is how can we get access to, how can we use AMC for sponsored products? So in terms of getting access to AMC's for sponsored products, from what I'm hearing from Amazon, they're restricting it to working with a certain group of service providers. So Intentwise is one of those providers. If you're interested in working with AMC for sponsored products, you can definitely reach out to our team and we can help get that set up for you. And in terms of kind of applying that, I think we've touched a lot on audiences, but a lot of the value is it also kind of measuring your different tactics that you're doing on that kind of things. I can now see things like campaigns are driving new to brand customers versus driving repeat customers. And if new to brand customers are really focused for you, you can, instead of just seeing what are the total sales, I can see within my sponsored product campaigns, which ones do I want to focus on to drive net new customers? What ad types work really well in conjunction together? What ASINs are my customers purchasing first? And then after that, what are they using as secondary purchases, which then again funnels back into what we're doing on the audience side of things. So I think there's lots of different touch points that we can even take past the audience side just to get more insights deeper into what you're already doing from an advertising perspective without having to spend an additional dollar from what you're currently have enabled.
Yeah, taking that data, you hit new to brand. That's something I had on my list here that I did want to mention. We have a client that we're working with right now. We have that for the last few years, and they've grown by a few $1 million, and they're doing really well. And they started asking the question, like, where should we be putting our ad money? And what we came to realize through, looking through the metrics and through that data is that once they convert a sale, their product is the leader in the category. So it's such a good product that they actually have a 99% repurchase rate. Wow. Which is insane, right? So what's my answer to that is we need to focus on every single new to brand touch point possible to make sure that the first purchase that person makes when they get to the category is us. Once we do that, we know that we are the leader. But if we lose that sale, someone may continue to use a lesser product because they never actually try our product to get those new to brand sales. And we can basically take the market completely over. So we're in the process of kind of talking through what that strategy looks like and the ability of how to do that through utilizing AMC and utilizing DSP and having the ability to really put that into action in a meaningful way that we didn't have availability for.
At that point, when you get those type of insights, you can say, okay, we're cool losing money on the first purchase. The lifetime value of this is so worth us, just to get that first purchase, because it's going to be so much harder to steal them from a competitor than it is to get them to buy from me the first time around.
I think in that case, if you're running a 10% ACOS, which they are, and they're doing amazing, that is amazing. But it's also not actually serving them.
Yeah.
They're like you're saying, because the LTV is so high that to me, I'm ready to spend whatever it takes on that first one, even if that means we go to 100% ACOS just to get that first one, because the LTV is typically they will purchase for years. It is absolutely one of those things where that's where you kind of that's where you could skew data and metrics how you want. And in a way, it's like, oh man, ACOS, we don't want our ACOS to be 50%. Yeah. Spending more aggressively to do exactly that. And that's where I think a lot of people get fixated on certain things. They hear ACOS, they hear tacos, and they're like, it's got to be in this line. It's like, it doesn't have to be all the time if you know that the rest of the data matches up with what you're trying to do. So not fix it. And I think that that's one of the reasons that working with professionals and having that support system to see through, some of the things maybe you're getting into a brand, you're like, we really need to have a 20% ACOS to be, make money on every purchase. And it's like, you're missing the real numbers. And I think having a second set of eyes can be really, really helpful for that.
I like that a lot. I think you're totally right. I think we touched on this earlier. DSP, AMC, very technical. I think I see a lot of use cases of people saying, I didn't get any insights out of AMC. I've done it before. Or I've used DSP before and it didn't drive any sales. And my concern is always like, okay, that could be true, right? There could be scenarios where that's actually the truth. But I think there's a lot of scenarios where it's like, maybe you just didn't have, the right, there's a skill gap there. Maybe there wasn't the right implementation of things because it's very technical. And so I think it's something that, not everyone needs to go down the route of trying DSP, but on the AMC side, because of the readily available, how readily available it's become, I think everyone should be trying to implement this if they can find the resources to do so, because that insight, like you're mentioning, right? That's something you guys would have never been able to find without this level of data. That can completely change a brand strategy, like you're mentioning, from we need to focus on a 10% ACoS to 50% ACoS, right? Because I'd rather have a 50% ACoS and get 80% of the sales with that lifetime value than a 10% and get 40, right? So it's
Exactly.
totally worth it at that front. So that's awesome. I think that's a great insight people can take away. So definitely find ways to pick up AMC. I think it's going to just become more readily available as we move forward as well. So looks like we're coming up on the hour and want to definitely be mindful of everyone's time. So we'll start to wrap up. If you have any further questions, definitely still feel free to throw them in there and we will hang on to answer them or shoot you guys emails afterwards to answer them. But we'll definitely make sure it gets taken care of. But I appreciate you all joining us today, Corey. I appreciate you sharing your insights. I think everyone got a lot of value out of things today. If you guys want to hear more about this, definitely feel free to reach out. Happy to discuss this farther with you guys. If you want to learn more about myself or Intentwise, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can email me at kenton@intentwise.com, or you can visit intentwise.com online and learn more about what we do. And Corey, I'm sure there's some ways that people can find out more about you guys, what you guys are doing at Buffett Brand. How can they find out more about you guys?
Yeah, so kind of two main ways. So you could visit our website and see some of our resources, podcasts, blogs, product services and affiliates, and that sort of thing, buffettbrand.com/resources. And also you could follow me on LinkedIn for some insights and into the Amazon, Walmart, and beyond space. I try to put out some good content every week to help people out and bring value and bring some authentic views into the space and into the community.
Well, I appreciate it, Corey. Intentwise, we host these webinars pretty regularly. So if anyone, be on the lookout for our different posts, or you can view our website to see what events we have upcoming. But definitely excited to continue having these type of conversations. And Corey, I really appreciate all the insight you brought today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. All right, everyone, I hope you have a great day, a great Halloween, and a great weekend. Thanks, you guys.